Okay, hi, welcome to my live session, right? My Zoom live session. This is the number two, right? Number two live session for my primary math heuristics. Okay, now in this live session, what I will be doing is I'll be going through the four problems, right? Four problems on fractions, and I'll not be talking about too much about these fractions, about how to draw fractions problem, but I'm just going to talk about one important thing, all right? Because if you understand this one important point, then you should be able to draw problems, right? Fractions problems. Okay, so in these four problems, I'll show you how to draw the model, and then at the end of the four problems, then I will open the floor. Okay, I'll open to anyone who needs to ask question. So if you have any questions that you want to ask me, feel free, right? Feel free to ask me, and then or you can type your message and then send to me, and then I will answer you. Okay, so let's look at the first question, right? And so the first question, we always start with something simple, right? Something simple. So the first problem is like a primary 4 problem, and then later on you will see primary 5 problems. All right, the rest of the problems will be primary 5. But let's look at the first one, and the first one is a P4 problem, and Tom, Henry, and Charles share a bunch of rambutans. Tom ate one fifth of the rambutans, and Henry ate half of the rambutans, and Charles ate the remaining 12 rambutans. So how many rambutans were there at first? Okay, now many students should be able to do this problem. What they will always do is they will just take 1/5 plus 1/2, and then they have one whole, which is the entire rambutan, right? One whole means everything. And what they will always do is they will minus, okay, they will minus 1/5 and minus 1/2, and then they get the answer, which is the remaining 12 rambutans. So that is a fraction that tells you how many is the remaining rambutans, and then they get the answer correctly, right? So they know how to do this because they just have to add the fractions together. Now, when you think of that, when you always think like that, it's very dangerous, because if you look at the later questions, you find that it doesn't work, all right? It doesn't work all the time. So the lesson that I want to talk about, right, for this entire 1 hour or lesser is, all right, is this, okay, is this. You just have to ask yourself, every time you see fractions, you ask yourself this question: what are the fractions talking about? If they are talking about the same group or same thing, then you can plus the fractions, you can make the denominator the same. If the fractions are not talking about the same group or the same thing, then you don't make the denominator the same. You don't plus them together. And that is what I will be talking about for this entire 1 hour lesson. Yeah, because it's so important, because if you know that, then you find that you can solve the problem very easily. So let's look at the problem again. So what is the fraction talking about? Now, 1/5 is talking about what? You look at the off, right? You look at the off, and you will see what's behind the off. So what is behind the off? Which is the, okay, you can see the rambutans. So this 1/5 is talking about the rambutans. And you look at the second fraction, what is it talking about? Look at the off again. What's behind the off? The rambutans. So are they talking about the same group? Yes, they are talking about the same group, the same thing. So what I can do is I can make the denominator the same. So I take 1/5 and 1/2, and I make them equal, make them the same denominator. So I times 2, I get 2/10, and then this one times 5, and then times 5, and I get 5/10. And I use the fractions to draw the model. So how do we draw? Okay, now in the workshop, I'll be always telling you that you can't draw the first sentence. What do? You jump. If you can't draw the first sentence, you jump to the next sentence. There is always something you can draw. So Tom ate 1/5. So you don't look at 1/5. You now look at 2/10. So you draw out this fraction. So all the rambutans has how many boxes now? No more 5 boxes, because you change it to 2/10. So you cut into 10 boxes. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? All the rambutan now has 10 boxes. Okay, so let me change this into 2/10. And Tom ate 2 boxes. So you label. Okay? Yeah, so your model must have labels, like what we talked about in the last live Zoom lesson. Without labeling, your model is useless. So you must label. And then what happened? Go to the next sentence and draw the next sentence. Tom ate half, which is 5/10. So how do you continue to build your model? You label 5 boxes for Henry, right? Henry, not Tom, Henry. So Henry ate 5 boxes of the rambutans. So Henry, so label. And then go to the next sentence, Charles ate the remaining. So where are the remaining? So you can look at the model. There are 3 boxes, which is the remaining, and that is Charles. Charles ate the remaining. So you got to label, all right? And Charles ate how many? The remaining 12 rambutans, and that's how you build your model, right? So you must label. Very important. You need to label. Then your model will show more clarity. Your model become very clear. Okay. Have we completed the model? Not yet. Keep going. How many rambutans were there at first? So there is always a question mark that you can put on the model, and now your model is done. Okay, you have drawn out the entire problem. So what do you call the boxes that are the same? You call them units, right? Every box that look equal, you call them units. And now you pull the steps out of the model. So this is the whole idea, right? The whole method about model drawing is to draw first, then later you pull out the statements. So you look at the model and you can see that Charles has 3 units, and that is equal to 12. So this is called the unique statement, which I will talk to you about in the workshop. So you pull out the unique statements and you write down 1 unit, which is 12 divided by 3, that will be 4, right? So you can see that you don't have to think hard about the next step, because the next step is just to get 1 unit, find the value of 1 unit, and then use that value to get the question mark. So how many units of rambutan at first? So you count the boxes, there are 10 units altogether. So 10 times 4, right? And there are 40 rambutans in the bunch, and you solve the problem, right? So that is how easy. All right, for a weak students, don't know how to do, then I advise you, encourage you to always draw the model and pull out the statements, right? So every time you apply the model drawing, this is what we always do. Draw, then pull out the statements from the model. Okay, so but this problem is very easy for many students because students generally what they will do, they always plus the fractions together, they minus, but it doesn't work all the time, because if you go to the next problem, then what happened? That's when many students get stuck. They did the same thing as the earlier problem and they get 0 marks, right? So George had a sum of money. He spent 1/3 of his money on food, 2/5 of the remainder money on clothes, and he spent the remaining $156 on a new watch. So how much did he spend on clothes and how much was the sum of money? So many students, all right, if they do not understand the concept well, they don't understand the concept of fractions, they will do what? They will take 1/3 plus 2/5, and then they get something, right? And then what happened? Then they have 1 whole minus the answer to get you the remaining, the fraction that is the remaining, right? So when you do like that, it's wrong already, right? Because you're actually making the denominator the same. When you try to add the 2 fractions, you will have to make the denominator the same when you add the fractions. But are the fractions talking about the same thing? Are they talking about the same group? And that is what you need to understand at the end of this live lesson. Are the 2 fractions talking about the same thing? So let's look at it. George had a sum of money. Okay, so let's highlight. Okay, let's do highlighting. He spent 1/3 of his money. So what is 1/3 talking about? It's talking about, look at the of, right? What is it generally talking about? Generally, it's talking about his money. Okay, some students, they will tell me it's talking about the money spent on food. That's very specific, right? Very specific. But I want to ask you this question. What is it generally talking about? It's talking about his money, right? The whole fraction is talking about the entire money, right? And the second fraction is talking about what? It's generally talking about his remainder, his remaining money. So are these 2 fractions talking about the same thing? So is the money, his money, the same as the remaining money? Definitely not the same. His money means everything, all his money. Remainder money means what? The leftover, all right? The leftover money. So they are not the same quantity. So you cannot make the denominator the same. Okay, yeah, so that is what you need to know, right? So every time you see fractions with word problems with fractions, you just have to remember what are they talking about, and then use that to help you to draw out the model. Okay, so can we draw the model? Yes, we can. George had a sum of money. So if I don't know how to draw the first sentence, go to the next one. And 1/3 is talking about his money. So draw a rectangle, right? Which is his money, all the money, cut into 3 boxes. And he spent 1 box on food. Now, in the workshop, I will be talking to you about arrow pointing. So when there are fractions, there will be arrow pointing. So how do you point the arrow? So the denominator is talking about the total parts of the money, which is 3 boxes that you see in the model. And 1 box is referring to the food. Okay, 1 box is pointing to the food. So that's why you label 1 box food. And the second fraction, the denominator is talking about the total, right? In P3 or P2, denominator refers to the total, right? How many altogether, how many parts altogether. So the reminder's money, you must have 5 boxes, right? So if you look at the model, where is the remainder? The remainder is on the right side. This is the remainder. So are you able to cut into 5 boxes? A little hard, right? It's a bit hard to cut into 5 boxes. So what do we do? Then you drop down, which is what we will learn in our workshop. So if you cannot cut into 5 boxes, you drop down another new rectangle, right? Which is the same length, right? And you cut into 5 boxes. So this is what we do. When you cannot cut into 5 boxes, you have to drop down. Drop down so that you have a new rectangle and you drop down, cut into 5 boxes, and then you can label already. You can label 2 boxes of the remainder are spent on clothes. So this numerator is pointing to the clothes. So in the workshop, I will teach you how to do arrow pointing, where to point, right? So this is called arrow pointing that you will learn when you draw model. Okay, then where is the remaining? After he spent 2 boxes of the remainder on clothes, then where is the remainder? Where's the remaining? He spent the remaining, which is the last 3 boxes that you see, on a new watch. So let's label watch. And how much is that? $156. So you got to be very detailed in your labeling. So whatever numbers you see, you have to put onto your model. You have to add to your model. So the model becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. So how much did he spend on clothes? And that's where you have question mark, all right, how much? And how much was the sum of money, which is over here, question mark. The sum of money is the whole rectangle on top, and your model is done. Okay, so you can see that this model and the earlier model, they are different because questions are different. So you do not expect to draw the same model for all kinds of questions. Every question will give a different model. So you don't memorize the model, right? You have to draw sentence by sentence. And then after drawing, you realize that, hey, the model looks so different. It's not the same as the other model. Okay, so the model is done already. So what's the next step? The next step is to just analyze your model, look at the model, pull the steps out. Okay, but before you can put the steps out, you realize that you have boxes that look the same size, that looks different size. You have big boxes and small boxes. Then what do you do? How to cut them equally? All right, so you have 2 big boxes, which is the remainder, and there are 5 smaller boxes, which is also the remainder, right? The remainder. So how do you cut them equally? So in the workshop, it's very easy. All right, you don't really have to cut into smaller parts. You can just put 5 units. Okay, because at the bottom, there are 5 smaller boxes. So just put 5 units. And then over here, also 5 units. And then how about the bottom? Now the bottom, you just have to put 2. Why do you put 2 units? Because on top, you can see there are 2 big boxes, right? You can see on top, right? There are 2 big boxes. That's why you put 2 units inside the smaller boxes. And why do you put 5 units in the bigger boxes? You put 5 units because you look at this rectangle, there are 5 smaller boxes. So that's why you put 5 units in the bigger boxes. And then if you start counting all the units in the remainder, you will realize that they are all the same. Like 10 units on top, 10 units below. That's how you cut them equally, right? As simple as that, not very hard. All right, and then of course you do the same over here. Make sure that when you cut them into units, the whole model must do the same, right? Okay, so the model now becomes clearer already, and you can pull the steps out already. So how do you pull the steps? You look at your model and you see whether you can write any unique statements. What kind of unique statements? Like the watch, you look at the watch, 6 unit is 156. That is a unique statement. And once you're able to do that, then the next step, you don't have to think much, right? So you can see that without model, you have to think what's the first step, what's the next step. It's a little hard. But once you write 6 unit is so much, then the next step is to just find 1 unit. So you take 156 and you divide by 6. And what do you get? So 156 and you divide by 6, you will get $26. So your 1 unit is $26, and that is called the value of 1 unit. And you use that value to find your question mark, which is how much did he spend on clothes? So he spent 4 units, right? 4 units on clothes. So you take 26 and you times 4, and you will get how much? So 26 times 4, he must have spent $104 on clothes, and you got your part A easily. Then how much was the sum of money? Then you look at the second question mark, and you add up all the units, all right? The units that you can see over here. So yeah, 5, 10, 15. So there are 15 units, right? So if there are 15 units, then how much is the sum of money? So your 15 units will be equal to, go back to the value of what is 1 unit. So that will be 26 times 15. So what was the sum of money? And you will get $390, and that is the sum of money. See? Right, so what's the lesson here? Now the lesson here is you got to be very careful when you see fractions. Do you add fractions all the time? Do you make the fractions to have the same denominator all the time? No, we don't. Right, in P4, it's easy when you see fractions, you plus them or you minus them. But when it comes to P5, you got to be careful, because what are the fractions talking about? They are not talking about the same thing. So you cannot make them the same denominator, and that is very important. All right, you must understand the difference. All right, are they talking about the same group, or are they not talking about the same group? Okay, now once you understand this, you can do the much harder problems, which is primary 5. Okay, the primary 5, of course, this question that you see now is a primary 5 problem, which is the remainder, and remainder problems are taught at primary 5. And now you can see that in the next question, right, you can see that it gets even harder, but the concept, the idea is the same. What are the fractions talking about? Still the same, right? And every time you see fractions, then students ask me, what method do I use if I see this problem? Well, you don't have to think about the method, because it's obvious. There are fractions, you draw model. Yeah, it's very obvious. First method that always comes to your mind, can I draw model? Fractions are clues to telling you that you must draw model when you see fractions. Okay, so let's look at this problem, and it's a 4-mark question, right? It's a primary 5 problem, and this problem is taken out from Nanhua, okay, Nanhua SA2 2020. Okay, so it's a 4-mark question. Okay, so how do we draw this problem? So you need to read the question first and highlight. Mrs. Tan make as many chocolate muffins as blueberry muffins. So what does that mean? It means that equal number. Right, she made equal number of chocolate muffins and blueberry muffins. Okay, she gave away 1/3 of the chocolate muffins, and she gave away 1/4 of the blueberry muffins. So question here, can I take 1/3 plus 1/4? Can I make the denominator the same? Then you must ask, are they talking about the same thing? So you look at 1/3. What is it talking about? It's talking about what's behind the off. All right, what's behind the off? So 1/3 is generally talking about what? Talking about the chocolate muffins, generally, all right? All right, bigger picture, right? What is it talking about? Chocolate muffins. What is 1/4 talking about? The blueberry muffins. Okay, are they talking about the same kind of muffins? They are not talking about the same kind of muffins. So you cannot make the denominator the same. You cannot take 1/3 plus 1/4. Why? Because when you take 1/3 plus 1/4, you will have to make the denominator the same already, which is what we don't want. So you can't add the fractions together. So this is all you need to know, all right, to avoid the mistake that many students will make. Okay, so now we know they don't talk about the same group, so we can draw the model later on. So among the muffins that were left, right, there were 35 more blueberry than chocolate muffins. So what fraction of the muffins were given away? And your answer must be simplest form. How many muffins were left? Okay, so model drawing is the method for fraction problem. So let's draw the first sentence. Mrs. Tan make as many chocolate muffins as blueberry muffins. So this one, you must know how to draw. So when there is an equal number of chocolate and blueberry, you will have to know how to draw equal number, which is 2 rectangles of the same length. Okay, in the workshop, I will be telling you that you need to draw at the side, at the left side. So there's a dotted line at the left side, and all your rectangles must begin on the left side. a line. There must be a line. And there's an equal number. So there is a dotted line to show equal concept. Means you draw until where? Where do you draw the rectangles until? Until the dotted line. That is equal number. Okay, you draw the first sentence already. Let's go to the next one. She gave away 1/3 of the chocolate muffins. So arrow pointing, right? In the workshop, you will learn about arrow pointing. So the denominator is talking about the total parts of the chocolate muffins that you must cut. You must cut into 3 parts, and she gave away 1 part. So you got to label, gave. And then this is the left, okay, the left. Again, you can see that it's important to label, right? And she gave away 1/4 of the blueberry. So the blueberry muffins has a total of 4. Means you must cut into 4 boxes, right, for the blueberry muffins. So let's cut into 4 boxes like this. And she gave away 1 box, okay, 1 box. So here, label. And do remember to label this side, which is left, right? So you draw until almost half the problem already. And among the muffins that were left, there were 35 more blueberry muffins than chocolate muffins. Now, if I don't know how to put this, into the model, then you can actually jump, skip, ignore. So in the workshop, I will be telling you also that when you can't put anything inside the model, then you skip, right? You don't have to force yourself to put anything inside, right? So you can always leave it alone. And look at the part A. What fraction of the muffins were given away? So I can't put the question mark for part A, because how do you put the question mark for a fraction, right? So then I don't put the question mark in the model. How many muffins were left? So if you don't know how to put the question mark for part B, you can also leave it alone, okay? Otherwise, you can also be creative. You can do something like this if you want. All right, you can find how many chocolate muffins were left and how many blueberry muffins were left, and then you just have to plus them together later. So it's up to your creativity. But otherwise, if you don't know how to put a question mark, you can also leave it blank. Okay, leave it blank. So in other words, your model is done already. Something like this. Yep. Okay. So what do? So when you have finished your model drawing, then you study your model, look at your model, and try to pull out the steps, right? Okay, but before you can pull out the steps, you can see that the boxes are different size. So what should you do? If you have big boxes and small boxes, what should you do? You should try to cut them equally. So how do you cut them equally? Similarly to what you saw in the earlier problem, there are 4 small boxes below. So I've just put 4, right? Same as just now, right? Right? How to cut them equally? There are 3 bigger boxes on top, right? The chocolate muffins has 3 bigger boxes. So you just put 3, right? And then every box, you also do the same. So you have 4 units. And then below, every box is 3 units. So now you count the units. Do you have 12 units of chocolate muffins? And do you have 12 units of blueberry muffins? Yeah, you have. So that means that equal number, right? Equal number of chocolate muffins and blueberry muffins at first. All right. Okay, then remember the 35 that you can't put in the model. So now can you connect? So whatever you can't put in the model, you will now have to connect to the model. So how do you connect this number to the model? There were 35 more blueberry than chocolate muffins left. Okay, so let's look at the chocolate muffins left, which is how many units left? So there are 8 units, okay, 8 units of chocolate muffins left. And how many units of blueberry left? Okay, there must be 9 units, okay? So you minus, and that will give you how many more blueberry than chocolate muffins left. That will give you 1 unit more, right? So let me just put down 8 units, and then this is 9 units, okay? Yeah, so you can see that there's 1 unit more blueberry muffins left. So that 1 unit more, you connect to the value, which is 32. So your 1 unit is 32. So you have found the value of 1 unit. Okay, and use that value to do your part A and part B. So actually we can do part A already without even all these statements, without all these number statements. So what fraction of the muffins were given away? Okay, so let's use the units to get the fraction, right? So you can see the model drawing is very effective, right? Do you know that this part A, we don't even have to have all these steps here. We don't need to have all these steps. We can do part A already, right? Part A, by looking at the units to get the answer. All right, so let's look at the units. So how many units of muffins all together. You have 12 units plus 12 units, 24 units. So you have 24 units of muffins altogether. How many muffins were given away? Which is 4 plus 3. So there are 7 units of muffins given away. So what fraction of the muffins were given away? 7 over 24, without any statements, right? Without any steps, just by looking at the model, you can get the answer, right? So that's why it's effective. That's why it's effective for the weaker students. If they understand how to draw the model, they can get the marks easily. Then part B, how many muffins were left? So I know the value of 1 unit, which is over here. 1 unit is 32. Then how many units were left altogether? So you have 9 units plus 8 units. There are 17 units of muffins left altogether, right? So how many is 17 units? So 17 units will be 17 times 32. So what is 17 times 32? And you use your calculator, or is it 17 times 32? Let me have a quick check. So how many muffins were left, right? So 1 unit is, I make a mistake. Now there were 35 more blueberry, not 32 blueberry. So this is 35, right? 1 unit is 35. And so 17 times 35. Okay, 17 times 35. So what is 17 times 35? So 17 times 35, that will be 595 muffins left altogether. And that's how you get your part B, right? Part B, right? So you can see that that it's not very, the problem is very hard. You can see maybe very hard to solve, but when you understand, okay, when you understand what the fractions are talking about, right? And you know that if they are talking about different things, then you can't make them the same denominator, you can't add them, then you find that you can actually draw out the problem quite easily, right? If they are talking about the same group, then what do? Then you just make the denominator the same, and you can still draw the model. So either way, you are still going to draw the model. Okay, so you can see that this is a 4-mark question, but you actually make it quite simple by breaking down the problem. You break down the problem by drawing out the sentence one by one. That's how you break down the problem into manageable steps. Okay, now we come to the last problem, which is the grand finale, all right, which is the hardest of all. This is a question 17. It's a 5-mark question, also in Nanhua paper, year 2020, SA2. So it is especially hard because there are 3 fractions, right? 3 fractions makes the problem even harder. And then, so how do we do? So the same thing is still the same thing that we need to ask ourselves. The fractions talking about the same thing? Are they talking about different things? So you need to answer that question. So let's look at the problem and let's see whether are the fractions talking about the same group or different groups. Mr. Lim donated some books for sale at the school carnival. 3/5 of the books were fiction books. So what fraction is this talking about? This fraction is talking about the books generally, okay? Look at what's behind the off. Generally is talking about the books, and the rest were non-fiction books. And the second fraction, what is it talking about? 7/10 of the total number of books. So this second fraction is generally talking about the total number of books, okay? So are these 2 fractions talking about the same thing? 3/5 and 7/10 talking about the same group? Yes, they are. Even though they are phrased differently, the books means all the books. The total number of books means also the books, which is all the books. So the 2 fractions are talking about the same thing. So which means that I can make the denominator the same. So 5 times 2 and 3 times 2, right? Okay, let's go to the other fraction. 4/7 of the books sold were fiction books. So what is this fraction talking about? It's talking about the books sold, which is different, right? So the books sold is not the same as all the books. So this third fraction is not talking about the same group. So which means that I cannot make the denominator the same. So I leave it alone, right? So there are 3 fractions. So which fractions are talking about the same group, which is 3/5 and 7/10. And the 4/7 is talking about something else. So we don't make them all the same denominator. So can we draw the model? Yes, we can. Once you understand this, we can draw the model. Okay, so let's draw the model and let's read the question again. Mr. Lim donated some books for sale, 3/5 of the books. So which means that I don't look at 3/5 already. What has it become? It has become 6/10. So I draw out 6/10. So I have a rectangle, which is all the books, and I cut into 10 boxes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 6 boxes were fiction. So arrow pointing. So in the workshop, you will understand arrow pointing, how to arrow point, and you must label. So 6 boxes were fiction books and the rest. So where are the rest? The rest is over here. The rest were non-fiction books. Okay, so make sure you have good labels because labels make the model very clear. Okay, without the labels, you will not know what the model is talking about. So you're drawn until here. All right, keep reading. 7/10 of the total number of books were sold. So how am I going to add this add this sentence onto the model? So in the workshop, I also talk about something else. I talk about you are also able to draw separate models. You don't have to draw everything in the same model. So if you don't know how to build the model, you can actually have 2 separate models and then you compare left and right. All right, you compare side by side, or you can draw the separate model below the other model, which is what we are going to do. So we are going to draw another rectangle, which is the same, right? Same length. Why the same length? Because it's talking about the same thing. Talking about the same thing, right? Talking about the same group, which is all the books. And you cut this rectangle into 10 boxes also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 2 models, one below the other, so that I can compare. I can compare later on. And 7 boxes were sold. So let's label 7 boxes were sold. And the other 3 boxes must be not sold. Okay, clear? So you're drawn until here already. Yeah. So we have 2 models to compare. So for harder problems, you find that sometimes you may need to draw 2 models to compare left and right, to compare side by side, or one below the other. So 4/7 of the books sold were fiction books. So the third fraction is talking about what? It's talking about this, right? The books sold. So now I go to my model and look for the same thing. Look for the books that were sold. So where are the books that were sold? Which is over here. Can you see? These are the books that were sold. And how many boxes do I have inside? 7. And isn't that the same exactly? Right? So you have to cut this part of the model into 7 boxes because the fraction says so, right? The fraction says there is a total of 7 parts of the books that were sold. And 4 parts that were sold were fiction. So you will need to label 4 parts that were sold were fiction. And then the other 3 parts must be the non-fiction. So keep labeling, right? Keep labeling, and then it becomes clearer and clearer. And there were 32 non-fiction books left unsold. So again, do I know where to put the 32 inside the model? So if I don't know where to put inside the model, then I don't put it inside. I skip, right? I leave it alone and I go on to the next sentence. How many fiction books were not sold? So can I put the question mark? How many fiction books were not sold? Well, I look at the model and I do not know where to put the question mark, right? So if I don't know where to put, then you don't put also, you skip. So in other words, you have actually drawn out the model. Your model is done already. Okay, so if you think you have done everything already, everything is all put inside the model, is clear already, then you look at the model and what do? And you try to pull out the statements. Okay, pull out the statements. But before that, let's call every box units so that it looks more clear. So every box is called 1 unit. You can see that at this point of time, I did not try to solve the problem. So I'm actually trying to draw out the problem, right? Without solving yet. But now, after drawing already, you will need to try to solve it, try to pull out the steps. So you look at the model. and you study carefully, right? It's not that hard to look at the model. You can see what? You can see that there are actually 3 units of non-fiction books that were sold, right? And how many units of non-fiction books altogether? There are 4 units. If you notice over here, there are 4 units of non-fiction books altogether, right? So you have sold 3 units. So let's put down sold, right? And then that 1 unit here must be unsold, or let's call it not sold, or unsold lah, unsold. Okay, see, that's how you look at the model, right? You can see over here, there are 3 units, okay, 3 units of non-fiction books that were sold. So over here, same thing, I label 3 units, right? And then the other 1 unit is left unsold. Okay, then how about the fiction? Now you look at the fiction books, you can see that there are 4 units, okay, 4 units of fiction books that were sold. So I look at the fiction books here, and you can see there are 4 units here, and I label sold, right? So you have 4 units of fiction books that were sold. So the other 2 units here, the other 2 units must be the fiction books that were unsold. Now the model becomes super clear, right? Super clear already. Okay. All right. So remember the number that we can't put, right? What's the number that we can't put? There were 32 non-fiction books left unsold. So where is that 32 that we can put inside the model? There were 32 non-fiction books that were left unsold. Isn't that over here, which is 1 unit, right? So you have 1 unit of 32 non-fiction books left unsold. So which means that if your 1 unit is equal 32, then how many fiction books were not sold? So where do you put the question mark? How many fiction books were not sold? Isn't that over here, right? So you have 2 units of fiction books unsold. So that 2 units must be 32 times 2, and you get your answer 64. 2 steps only, 2 steps. Yeah, so it's quite amazing, right? If you can draw a model well, you actually cut down the steps to 2 steps. Not very hard. Of course, the problem is very hard when you don't have a method. When you try to think about how to solve in your mind, it's very hard. But when you try to draw the problem, you can see there is only a few steps only. Sometimes even no steps, sometimes. Okay, so what at the end of the entire, right? We have come to the end of the 4 problems already, how we draw out these 4 problems. But the whole thing, the whole point, the whole lesson is about what? It's about it's not to memorize the model, all right? Please do not memorize the model, because if you do that, you will find that you get yourself into trouble. The whole lesson here is what are the fractions talking about, and you need to remember that. To draw the model well, you must know what they are talking about. If the fractions are talking about the same thing, same group, then you make the denominator the same. If they're not talking about the same group, then you cannot make them the same denominator. You cannot add them, you cannot minus them, but eventually we are still going to draw the model. Whether they refer to the same thing or not the same thing, we will still be able to draw the model. And that is what I'm showing you. Okay, so in the workshop, there'll be more things there'll be more than this. Okay, more things to learn. This is just part of the model drawing for fractions. So in P4, so this is this part of the lesson. This how to draw model, how to draw fractions for how to draw model for fractions is in the P4 workshop. Right, in the primary 3 workshop, we don't do that, because primary 3, they don't really learn fractions a lot yet. So in P4, they will start to learn a lot of fractions, and that's when we introduce the model drawing on how to draw fractions problems. All right. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor, open this time now to anyone who may have any questions. You can send to me, right? You can send to me by WhatsApp, or you can chat messages. You can send to me any questions, and then I will answer you, because it's supposed to be 1 hour live session, to give you more time to interact with me, right? More time to ask questions. Because if it's a recorded lesson, you know that we can't interact, right? But if it's a live lesson, you can ask questions, I can answer you back, which is more, there's more value, right? More value in a live lesson than in the recorded lessons. Okay, so let me just give you wait a while for you to think of any questions you want to ask me, and then I will answer you. Okay, yeah, I think I saw a WhatsApp message. Okay, now I think somebody asked whether when am I going to conduct the primary 4 model drawing workshop? Okay, not yet, not this month, should be somewhere next month. Because this month I'm still doing primary 3 model drawing. I'm still focusing on primary 3 model drawing. So there'll be a repeated workshop on primary 3 coming up soon. And then after that, we will move on to primary 4. And then primary 4, we'll move on to primary 5, primary 6, and then other types of workshop. So the primary 4 model drawing workshop will be somewhere in December, which I will announce in my Facebook. Okay, so stay tuned, all right? So be in touch with the, join the Facebook, all right? The Primary Math Heuristic Workshop community. You join the Facebook group, and then you'll be able to be updated on when is the workshop coming up for primary 4 model drawing. Okay, I hope I answered that question well. Okay, any other question? Okay, somebody asked what happened if I can't draw the model for fractions. Okay, now, well, if you can't draw the model for fractions, it's going to be a bit tough already. And furthermore, it's not hard to learn how to draw model for fractions. It's not hard. It's actually very easy. All right, there are not a lot of things to learn. So I don't see any difficulty in learning how to draw model. So if you tell me that I can't draw the model for fractions, then most likely is the understanding, right? You might have understood wrongly, or you didn't have enough practice. That's why you couldn't draw the model. Because if you can't draw the model, then what happened is there any other method to solve? For some questions, yes. For others, no. Right? Like for example, if it's a before and after problem, which I talked about the last time. If I can't draw the model for before and after, I can still use the tabulation method, the table method, a backup. That's a backup. But not every question is before and after, right? Not every fraction problem is a before and after problem. Then how? Then what do we do? Then you don't really have a backup already, right? And of course, you learn something called branching, right? There's a branching method that you can use. That is also a backup. But remember, there are some fraction problems which are not before and after, and the only way is actually to draw the model, the only method. So if you are unable to draw the model, then you find that it's really very hard to solve. Okay, so my advice is to make sure you pay attention to your school teacher lesson. So when your school teacher is drawing the model, you make sure that you understand what she's doing, and you always practice on your model drawing. Okay, and that's how you do better in model drawing. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so there's a question that comes in that they're saying, so do I also teach other kinds of heuristics besides model drawing? Yes, I also teach other kinds of heuristics, like assumption method. So I'll be talking about the assumption method later on. In the weeks to come, there'll be methods like systematic listing, finding a pattern. So these are all common types of heuristics that you must know to solve common problems, even for area and parameter, right? Area and parameter, there's something called spatial visualization. That's also a method by itself. So I'll be talking about all these in the weeks to come, finding a pattern when you have those pattern problems. So there will be a new set of skills, a new set of skills that you must be aware in order to solve pattern problems. So all this, I will be talking about it during the year. So you just have to stay in touch with my Facebook, right? And then when I announce something, you just keep yourself updated as I announce what is happening. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so every Friday, what's going to happen is every Friday, we're going to have a live session, right? Every Friday live session at 8 to 9 p.m. So in this live session, what do? I will be looking at 4 problems, okay? 4 problems of any kind. And I'll be using a particular method, a particular heuristics to solve these 4 problems, right? Like in this live session, I use model drawing, and we focus on how to draw fractions word problems. So in the next live session, what am I going to focus on? I'm going to focus on tabulation. how to use table method to solve before and after problem, right? So I will again show you 4 problems, right? 4 examples, and how to use a table method to solve the 4 problems. And we are not going to talk about model, even though we can draw model, but the focus will be on table method. So that will be in the next live session. So every Friday, 8 to 9 p.m., there is something new to learn, right? Something new that you can always expect, right? And I will prefer you to, I mean, if you are able to come live, able to attend this live session, it will be very good, because then there's a lot of interaction. So don't watch the recorded, even though those of you who missed the lesson, I still record the lesson, but it's recorded, so you can't. It's hard for you to ask when you watch the recorded lesson. So I encourage those of you who missed the lesson to try to come live, come live, and then to hear me talk to you, and then along the way, we can always discuss about things that you may have, things that you may not understand. So I will help you along if you have any questions. So this is what I want to do, right? After teaching on the 4 problems, and then I would like to make it very interactive, right? So that is something which I would like to do in the live session. Okay, so every Friday will be 8 to 9. So just stay tuned, and just keep yourself updated, right? When you look at when you are in the Facebook, sometimes when I send announcement, and then when I send an announcement on or any workshop that's coming, or any live session that's coming, you just have to mark it down in your calendar if you're interested to attend. Okay. All right. Now, so there's no more questions, then we will end the live session. Right. It's about 45 minutes now. It's supposed to be 1 hour, but since there are no more questions, then we will end the session. And this session is recorded, right? It will be recorded, so that those of you who missed the session, you can still follow. You can still follow the lesson. All right. Okay. So if there's no other questions, no other questions, then we will end the session. All right. So I'll see you in the next live session. All right. So goodbye. See you next Friday.